we're all about saving businesses money. And what better time do you need to save money, right? It doesn't matter if you're a company that's turning over, 100 million, a billion, or you're a mom and pop shop that's kind of like really struggling right now. If you can save, $1,000 a month, that can help you meet your loan obligation. There he comes. If you can save $1,000 a month as a mom and pop shop, that's going to help you meet your loan obligation. Or if you're, if you're saving like 2 or 3, 4,000 a month or several thousand a year, that's going to help you prevent Bob from being furloughed in your warehouse. That's going to be great, right?
On this episode of Brews BizDev, my illustrious guest is Mark Ridley from GreenShootsFX, and we discuss the challenges and opportunities of starting a new business in a pandemic, the differences between being in a structured, large institution sales position and doing sales as an entrepreneur in a new business, and the value that proactive, intentional service brings to any organization, and certainly in Mark's industry. We also talk about a few other things that are a little outside the bounds. Hope you enjoy the episode. Thanks for watching and listening. And please, if you like our content, remember to subscribe and share. Hey, Mark, how's it going, bud? Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate being here. Looking forward to it.
Yes, me too. And now we are into it. So let's start with the easy stuff first, right? Just introduce yourself to our viewers/listeners, who you are, what you do. Do you like long walks on the beach? Whatever it might be, let us know what you're all about.
Far too many questions. Like in the sales environment, you're not supposed to stack your questions. It's just going to confuse the hell out of you.
Is that why I have been so terrible at it for so long?
Absolutely. Yeah. People get confused. I'm confused already. So Mark Ridley, co-founder of GreenShootsFX. We're a corporate payments company specifically focusing on foreign exchange, providing great pricing, great advice, plenty of hand-holding, and a lot of sophisticated product as well, as you would expect from a fintech. Walks on the beach. Yeah, I'm up for that. We've got a couple of dogs. I've got one, which I'm hoping is going to be relatively quiet for the next 45 minutes or so, chewing on a bone or something like an antiquity, probably. So yeah, we're down the beach and we're blessed. Like our road is actually at perpendicular to the beach. So we're down there quite a bit, even in the winter. We've got 2 insane dogs that love ice cold water, which is awesome. So unlike myself, who doesn't? And that's me in a nutshell.
Excellent. That's all we need to know. Well, thanks for joining us, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, ciao. I've enjoyed it.
Ciao. Glad I got this beer. Speaking of beer,
absolutely,
let's get into that. So what beer are you drinking for the episode?
So we have East by Northwest, which is by a local brewery here, Untold Brewing. They came to, so we're in Situate, Massachusetts, and they came back to Situate. I say they came back to Situate. The owners, the creators of the company came back to Situate, Mass, a few years back to launch this particular brewing company. I think the owners were originally from around here. I think they went to maybe high school around here, and then they left to go to university. We're always in love with craft beers, and it just came back, and it's been an explosion. Like these guys, they have their own. Whilst they have their own microbrewery, they have a little bar section next to it. They have these pop-up trucks that come through, every other time that they're open, which is fantastic. And this is now commercially available in many of the kind of stores around here as well. So I thought I'd choose this one to pay homage to them, but support local. That's what we're all about, supporting local.
Exactly. Exactamundo.
Right. What do you have?
You threw out, that you were from Massachusetts, which probably seemed obvious from that Boston accent that everyone's picking up on so far. So, that's cool.
Like this comes back to stacking those questions like, who am I? What am I about? Where am I from? So it's not an Australian accent. I can tell you that. I'm from London originally. To take the boy out of London. But I will say, I am actually a US citizen now. I don't know if you and I have ever discussed that in the past.
Oh,
Yeah, I became a citizen 2 years ago. Yeah, absolutely. I figured, I'm a taxpayer. My wife's American, my son's American. Might as well join the clan. So
we're going to pay in. You might as well sign up to maybe get something back out of it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
See how that goes. But
I get a blue passport and a lot of harassment from my buddies back in London.
Yes.
So it's all upside so far.
Nice. Well, I know are you going to actually use a glass? That's pretty fancy. So that's nice.
Yeah. You know what? I don't know what you're going to go with. I'm going to be very careful how I say this, but I'm not a fan of drinking from the can.
Well, get fucking used to it, buddy.
Yeah.
Here we go. What I'm featuring this episode is Unreliable Narrator by Threes Brewing, which I think is a part of Single Cut. Branch off of Single Cut North from Clifton Park, New York, which doesn't quite count as local because we're in Buffalo here. But it's New York. It's local enough. And, I wanted to match up the IPA something to at least get close. And I mean, I'll could get crucified around here, but there's not any like full on just IPAs that I actually really love in Buffalo. Ooh. One of my go-tos is technically an American IPA. And so, which is Hayburner. I'm like on every other episode, I believe so far, I've had a Hayburner in my hand. And, but I wanted to match what you had going on. And I love the concept of Unreliable Narrator. I fall for marketing sometimes like that. And there's a song of one of my fave bands, Pears, where he blurts out that as a lyric. So that's all it takes for me to buy your product is cool packaging, high ABV, and some kind of reference you probably weren't making, but I'm making my own head.
I see that, dude. I'm like you in a way. I buy shiny things. I do judge a book by its cover.
Oh, everyone does. That's why we have to keep saying don't do that, because otherwise it would be natural to not. But we do. All right, let's crack into this.
Well, I've also noticed that I'm actually drinking this out of a Brooklyn brewery. I don't know if you can see that.
Man, there's a lot to keep up with. Talk about stacking the information here.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Brooklyn Lager is that is a beer I do like.
Yeah, they make some good stuff.
They do.
All right.
All right. Cheers, mate.
Cheers, bud.
This is going to make for a very interesting afternoon.
Yeah. I hope you have a bunch of meetings afterwards.
Absolutely.
Good. And then family conversations. I mean, your family's probably used to you slurring your way through all the conversations at dinner.
That is very true. Yeah. My family think that I'm the silent type.
Yeah.
And it's largely because I'm sitting there kind of hungover from having conversations like this.
Because you're unconscious and you have those glasses that have open eyes on them. Yeah, no, that's good. I like that trick.
Exactly right. I'm like, let me just ponder that answer.
Let me think about that.
You know what? Yeah, I don't like a knee-jerk reaction. Let me just take an hour to get back to you on that. Exactly. But, yeah, not to go too far off topic, but since moving to the US, before we get onto a topic that I'm going to move us off of, so 5.5, so it'd be 6 years ago this August, we moved back to the States, I guess we should say. And within easily 6 months, I dropped 20 pounds in weight. And a lot of my buddies in the UK were expecting that weight to go the other way. But the fact that I was no longer out of a lunchtime, pretty much every lunchtime, like grabbing I'll be careful how I say this, because it's typically frowned upon in many places, but you might be grabbing a couple of beers with clients of a lunchtime.
You might be.
And then, 2 or 3 evenings a week, you're out grabbing a few beers with clients as well. And then you might throw a meal on top of that. And my wife is, she's a vegetarian. So we don't eat meat at home. Mm-hmm. So whenever I get out to a restaurant, particularly with a client, I'm kind of gravitating towards something a bit meaty. And so, the pounds were just piling on. And before I know, I think I was 205, something like that. Was my heaviest, and I wasn't really doing much in the way of exercise either. So I wasn't really helping myself. And then moving to the States and being based at home, as I have been for almost 6 years now, the weight just fell off. Just getting rid of that lunchtime drinking really made a massive difference. Because also what goes with that is the munchies. So, I'm then necking 2 or 3 bars of chocolate as a snack in the afternoon. So that's not helping me any. And when I go and see my PCP here twice a year for a checkup, and like she puts me through the ringer and everything comes back like normal. And I have to question every time, like, have you got the right results? Because for my entire career, I've drunk beer and eaten donuts.
Yeah.
And I haven't exercised since I was in my late 20s. So,
right. Well, slight changes in routine, right, can go a long way.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, the munchies are a killer. I usually don't do anything that instigates munchies until the end of the workday. So that's when, it tends to be like late night kind of stuff for me is the problem.
Yeah.
Not the only problem. I also drink on a podcast, we may have figured out, and possibly at other times through a given week. But certainly like those late meals, because it's it's 8 o'clock by the time you're unwinding, right? So it's like going home. I go home, like walk the dog, do all the stuff. Then there's dinner time. You got to take the dog back out, afterwards.
Right.
And then by the time usually I've done some more work in the meantime, there's something that's left over to do that I do between dog walks, and then on you go. And then it's like 9:30. It's like, oh, I should probably eat something. No, I'll just go to sleep, get a good breakfast, that kind of thing. And then an hour later, I'm like, yeah, no, I am going to eat. And guess what? It's not going to be something that you take time to prepare. It's made from good food. Once it's 10 o'clock, you're just grabbing, I'm like heating fucking tortillas, making my own quesadillas right on the stovetop.
Yeah.
So, high end stuff.
We don't have a microwave.
Yeah.
We haven't had a microwave in like, I don't know, over a decade, maybe more. And for me, that's a godsend, because if I did have one, then I would totally eat more junk.
Yes.
I'd rather probably not eat anything at all than spend time at 10 o'clock at night preparing a meal for an hour.
Right.
So yeah, it's so easy to just gravitate straight into the junk drawer. Which,
exactly.
Thankfully, we don't have too much of either.
Good. That's the nice of having good influences in the house as well. So that's a plus
100%. Yeah, if it wasn't for my wife and it wasn't for my son as well, like then I think I would be back up to the 205 range.
All right. Well, this is probably super compelling for the audience, but let's jump back into some other topics, I guess. Yeah, here's where that comes up. You have to manage that while we're having a conversation. It's one of the
exactly.
It's one of the perks of the conversation. Me putting out clips where I'm like, anyway.
Yeah, I just need to use the restroom. Are we cool with that?
Yeah. No, we're gonna keep rolling, but it's fine. Just turn your mic off. So to catch some folks up on some things, you have started a business in 2020. Possibly one of the greatest years ever to start a new business. So, midway through or just about, right, you took it on creating this international payments company.
Yeah.
Not knowing at the beginning exactly what the year was going to look like, right? But then pretty early on, things started tracking a certain way. But what are you going to do? Like turn around and go back? So having started a business and doing the bootstrapped version, right? There's no big funding. There's nothing, all this stuff coming in. So it's like, let's buy some runway and all that kind of stuff. What has it been like creating a new business in a field you're familiar with, but not familiar with being an entrepreneur, right? Having been employed in large banks, what's it been like learning to be an entrepreneur and doing that in the kind of fucking year that 2020 was?
Man, I could spend a good portion of time answering that. So in no particular order, the decision to start the business really came, strangely enough, over a few beers at the back end of 2019, where a buddy of mine and I were talking about all that we felt was wrong within, and again, I want to be a little bit careful how I say this because I don't want to tarnish all banks with the same brush, but we just felt like what was wrong with pricing, what was wrong with the level of education that's often not provided to clients in specific areas. It's namely an area that's kind of key to us, which is foreign exchange payments. And we kind of probably had that conversation a number of times, and it got to a point where we're like, you know what? either do something about it or shut up and just carry on doing what we're doing in the banks that we're in, and take the paycheck and move on. And we just felt like, you know what, I think 2020 is going to be that year of change. And then earlier on in the year, there were certain things were happening. And so we just said, you know, fuck it, let's go ahead and do it. And so we kind of started scoping that out. So while we might not have officially launched the company per se, as in like, here's our product ready for everybody to use until October, we'd kind of like started scoping out what that might look like from probably around about February time. And so like to pull all of that together in what is effectively a short space of time was kind of monumental, but that was largely because of finishing at kind of 3 a.m., working Saturdays and Sundays, getting back into the chair that I'm sitting in right now, at 6 a.m. again, and just like being incredibly enthused by what we felt like we could produce and what we could put out. Right. So that's kind of like when we started, like, and then the comments of like, why start the business, or like, you know, how's it been difficult? And oh my God, the pandemic. For us, it's actually been kind of like the opposite in some respects. If we were a travel agency, if we were a tour company or whatever, and we said in August, you know what, I think we should start something, that might be tantamount to madness in some respects, right? There's probably some genius out there that has figured out how to monetize that. But like for me, that would have been complete madness. Yeah. From our perspective, like we're all about saving businesses money. And what better time do you need to save money, right? It doesn't matter if you're a company that's turning over, 100 million, a billion, or you're a mom and pop shop that's kind of like really struggling right now. If you can save, $1,000 a month, that can help you meet your loan obligation. There he comes. If you can save $1,000 a month as a mom and pop shop, that's going to help you meet your loan obligation. Or if you're, if you're saving like 2 or 3, 4,000 a month, or several thousand a year, that's going to help you prevent Bob from being furloughed in your warehouse. That's going to be great, right? Because Bob's integral to your business because he's putting stuff on the back of a truck. If it doesn't get put on the back of a truck, it doesn't go. If it doesn't go, you don't get paid. You don't get paid, you're starving yourself of cash flow. And that, every business needs cash flow. So, with us focusing primarily on importers and exporters. So with importers, helping them pay less for what they bring into the US using superior foreign exchange rates and technology, and helping exporters collect more from what they sell internationally, i.e. hopefully they're invoicing in euro, for example, and they're collecting euro. And if their bank or regional community bank or credit union in most cases is converting that into US dollars, the rate it's just not going to be a great rate. So if we can help them collect more US dollars, then again, that's a good thing. And at the end of the day, we're all focused on their bottom line. Yeah. So, and that could be, there's many ways they can save money, right? If they're at a trade show, they could just not buy the 16,000 pens that nobody really cares whether they have or they don't have, right? So there's a cost saving. But from our perspective, this is more of a year round thing that we can do for them. So yeah, and it's been a monster learning curve. I mean, we started out not knowing what we didn't know, and there's still a lot that we probably don't know, and there's definitely still a lot that I learn on a regular basis, or that we learn on a regular basis. So it's been really educational. It's actually been a ton of fun. I think we can say that. You're right. It's been bootstrapped to a certain degree, in the sense that I'm probably borrowing against inheritance. So that's about as much as I'll say on that. But you're right. Largely bootstrapped, and we're good with that. Yeah, we're very fortunate in that regard. But yeah, no, it's been a journey, but it's been a really good one. Like, we've been really excited about the support that we've had from whether it's been friends, family, people that we know out there in the field, former colleagues, former clients, that have all really come together and helped us get the name out there, really. And working with individuals like yourself to formulate that brand and push that message out is kind of key, really. And what's interesting to me, and one of the things that we noticed very early on, or I felt very early on, is that the logo that's been on my business card is what's opened the doors for me and my team and the teams that I've managed in any of the banks that I've ever worked for. And I've worked for a number of global banks on 2 continents. And yet the product's been, okay. It's fit a purpose. Now I feel like I've got the best product that I've ever had, but the logo on my business card is not necessarily opening those doors because people don't know who we are. Like, the doors that are opening are certainly coming from individuals that know who I am and know what I'm about and know what my business partner's about and who he is. So, from a salesperson, from a relationship person, from a I really do give a shit person type thing, right? So, that's been a telling difference, really, in the way that you go about doing your business. Yeah. In that you've got to think about it in a different way. Like in the past, and I don't mean to sound like I never really. This is going to come across as probably being a bit negative, right? I don't want to sound like it wasn't. I didn't care, but you throw the dice, if you will, you throw the darts, or whichever analogy you want to use when you're in a big employer. I.e., you might send 100 emails out, and if you only get like 3 or 4 responses, you're like, okay, that's kind of fine, because I'm still getting a salary, and I'm probably going to get a bonus at the end of the year because we're still making money, and I'm still hitting targets, and the teams are still hitting targets. When you send out 100 emails and it's your own business and one doesn't reply, that's a pretty big tug on the heart for an only child who's like, but why do people not like me?
Exactly. Yeah.
What? So and it's like, I took time to send that email. I took time to research that company and they're ignoring me. Like, how could they do that to me? Whereas previously, we're kind of like, let's just throw it out and see what sticks. So you're thinking about things in a very, very different way. And I felt like I was always very client focused and client centric. And I think that even now when I look back on it, yes, I was, but now more so than ever. So there's been a change in kind of attitude around that. Yep. There's some other personal things as well. Like if you want to get really deep, and after a couple of 6.8s, we might get super deep. I think I've learned to appreciate the value of the dollar as well. When you come out of an environment that was relatively high paid, guaranteed income to pretty much nothing, to start with, you got to think about what you buy. So there's not, those days of, just, don't look at the price, just put it in the cart kind of thing. They're not there. And, even when this becomes a success, and I firmly believe it will become a success, I don't want to go back to those days of just buy it, just do it. I feel very humbled now more than ever. Right. And, and it's even given us food for thought about giving back as well. My business partners, he's very big into supporting homeless. I'm very big into wanting to help kids. And so kids charities really speak to me. And, we want to be able to create wealth within the company that we can then start giving back. Mm-hmm. We're not necessarily here to become millionaires. Excuse me. There could be a number of people out there going to say I think you do, in the sense that I don't think you need to be a millionaire to live in the United States. Yeah. And there's somebody out there saying, well, you do. And I'm going to turn around and say, that's because you bought a $50 million penthouse. You didn't have to buy a $50 million penthouse that's 800 square feet. You can live in a decent sized house in a nice area. Yeah. And, for a lot less. So, look, we're not a charity in the sense, but, we've got bills to pay. Mm-hmm. But if we can find a way that we can give back, that's exactly what we want to do. Bit cliche, I know, but that's, we stand by that. And, we'll have this conversation in 12 months. And if I say to you that I haven't given an hour of my time or a dime of my purse, then you can, call BS on it. But,
I will.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, man.
On this show in public. Yeah,
Live, so it can't claw it back.
Yeah, that's right. On a giant stage, pay-per-view. Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Let's see what this son of a bitch is really about. And what I'm curious, and I mean, we've had some chats about this over the past, 4, 5, 6 months, and I love the insight into, you mentioned some of the differences between, being an employee, like even in sales, right? Generally in sales and customer service kind of positions, customer relationship positions, in that an environment, right? An environment where, yes, you already covered, the paychecks are coming, even sometimes whether the results are there or not in a given day, week, month, whatever it is, right? Like the paycheck's there, you're like not quite as invested in the results of every single action you take. But also, one of the things that I've seen over the years with folks who have come out of a structured environment and then done their own thing is the structure itself being gone. Like there's a bit of a, where do I start, right? So like, it seems pretty easy to get lost if you don't have a kind of a plan in place and then some kind of something hemmed in to direct. It's very easy to get lost in the every good idea sounds great. Everything I read, I'm going to move on. Of course, we avoid hard seeming things or difficult seeming things at different times. And then just, there's always a fire to put out. So as far as like organizing yourself, and I'm thinking that there's salespeople, and I mean, hell, even marketing people, let alone the people who do a little bit of both, who coming out of some environments and want to like cash in on the whole entrepreneurial culture. Right. This country has got a lot of stuff out about like, hey, do your own thing, start your own thing. And, less about how brutally tough it usually is and how the odds are totally stacked against you. And specifically about how you have to organize yourself in a totally different way because somebody else hasn't basically done it for you. Talk a little bit about what that experience has been like for you as far as where that gap was, what the adjustment's been like, and any useful, tips or tricks or anything you've found to help kind of create your own structure for working.
Okay. You'll notice that I've got a pen in my hand, right? Because again, you've just stacked 750 questions. So,
and a small monologue.
Absolutely. So again, like a bunch of interesting questions in there, and when we can take this in a number of directions. So you're absolutely spot on, and I had a very similar conversation with somebody, funny enough, earlier on today, who is also contemplating like, shouldn't I start my own business versus maybe joining a growth company versus like trying to get in somewhere like on the ground floor. But so it's not my company, but I can feel like I'm part of it because I'm in it like at an early stage.
Yeah.
And I was kind of almost like trying to sort of pseudo convince that individual to maybe like, hey, like, you want that? You can come over here.
Right.
But so my comments to them were, look, you coming out of, again, a big institution, the one of the things that I noticed very, very early on is that you wear like 100 hats. So in the past, you had the luxury of just like, right, I'm a sales guy. I might be managing a team, but I'm still a sales guy. I know that I need to sell. I know what my products are. I know how they operate. I know how to position them. I'm just looking for clients. Mm-hmm. That's it. Now we are, like my business partner and I, like we kind of like really share the same hats in some, like depends on like, how busy we are on the day, but like we pretty much got the same hats on. You're the head of sales. Yeah. You're the chief operating officer. You're the chief buyer of services. You're the HR guy. You're the marketing guy. And so whereas your day used to be filled with one thing that you could just focus on and it was like nice and easy, now you've got to be a bit more disciplined and say, right, okay, I could spend all day just trying to find clients. Mm-hmm. But when you then like get somebody and then they're like, okay, yeah, let me just check you out on LinkedIn and social media. And there's nothing there that they can find. You're like, no, what I'm going to do is spend all day tomorrow marketing the crap out of my firm and making sure that the brand's out there and it's on the side of billboards and it's where else does it need to be? Like, can I put it on Can I make my own merchandise? You know,
yes,
I know, right? Could we put it on stuff? But then you could spend all day doing that, and then you realize several weeks go by and you've got your brand out there, but oh shit, that needs to be paid for. So like, how are we going to pay for that? Well, we need some clients. Okay, let me get back on the client bus. So and by the way, I'm also, as I mentioned, like, the chief operating officer and the buyer of services. So like, okay, we've got a great product in place, we've got great systems, but I'm always looking like, well, that could be better, right? It could always be better. So let me have a look what's out there, and let me think about like who else is doing it. So let me research other companies that are doing something similar.
Yeah.
But then let me also investigate tech providers and other, tech companies to see like, okay, is it possible for me to add on these bells and whistles that I think might be interesting? So now I'm moving like 3,000 miles an hour in that direction when we've got clients over here that are kind of like, actually, what you have is fine.
Yeah.
Probably okay to just pay a bit more attention to us. Not saying that they're not getting their attention paid to, but you're trying to split yourself in about 100 different ways. So, but then you do get into a rhythm. And I find that if I, in some ways, almost not necessarily pay it attention, I find that rhythm rather than saying, I'm only going to do like 2 hours today of marketing. Then I'm only going to do 2 hours of this. Then I'm not really that kind of person. I'd be more like, I know I've got to get these 4 things done today. And so, I'll fall into that rhythm and it will get done. If you can hear some growling, that'll be our 6-month-old puppy just finished the bone that I had hoped might last him a good hour.
Yeah.
So,
and to be clear, the puppy is not your business partner, and also your business partner is not sitting next to you that we're just keeping off camera for some reason. Even as you've gestured a couple times like my business partner, and I'm like, it seems like we've got him in a cage. Yeah. We're not willing to show him, or it's your imaginary friend. Oh, hi, I'm Mark's business partner. I'm real.
Yeah, exactly. This is where I get the puppets, and then people are like, yeah, close the account.
Your partner,
we knew it.
Yes.
Yeah. Close the account.
Exactly.
Awesome. So now I've lost my train of thought.
That wasn't the end?
I don't think so. No. Well, it could have been. Like, I'm going to a little side story. I remember when I joined Deutsche Bank and I was in Germany on an offsite, and I was up on stage like, hey, here's the new guy, Mark. Mark, talk about your experiences. 1 second.
Yeah, no problem.
Hey, you. Hey. There you go. So yeah, being up on stage, Mark, share us about your experiences. And I remember it snowed the day before. I was flying into Germany, and we were delayed coming out of London into Frankfurt, where the conference was. And I'm up on stage, and I'm like 4 minutes into my dialogue, and I'd suddenly remembered like it had snowed, and my wife was stuck in snow that morning, and I'm like thinking about her and the issues she might be having. Totally lost my concentration in front of I think it was about 220 odd individuals. I'm like, sorry guys, just thinking about my wife and snow. And that's what's happened just now. Yeah. I've got a dog that's just broken my concentration.
Yes. Again, repeatedly, I bet.
Yeah.
Like, this is now some kind of a training session instead. Like, focus, get your pitch across, even with a dog barking.
Well, yeah, that's it. I mean, it's the end of the day as well. I've been up early. My brain is fried.
Yes. So. Yeah. Well, and I interrupted you, which is usually most of the reason I take full responsibility. It seemed like a good time to get in the point and make fun of your like fake business partner puppets. So
absolutely, I am gonna. Excuse me once more.
Yeah.
I am gonna. You need to calm down, my little friend. Shush. Shush. All right, like that. I'll give you one more go. And then it's the pound. All right, mate.
So, anyway.
Please don't make a sound.
Let's do some silent meditation to wrap this show out. And thanks for joining us, everyone.
Yeah. It's like a late night chat show.
Face for NPR. Radio. We're here to
exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Even though it's 10 a.m. and you're on the morning ride into the office, but hey, you're starting to doze.
Exactly.
Yeah, so we'll try not to trigger the pup too much anymore. So one thing I definitely do want to hit on, because I think you had talked about the structure, which is what we were trying to get at there. The totally different, or let's say lack of structure, right? When you're doing your own thing, is you got to make your own and figure out your own rhythm, like you said. One thing I definitely want to point into, because I don't think it's just in your industry that this is an issue, but based on our conversations, it is in your industry as well, which is one of your points of kind of differentiation, right? Is and we've had a lot of conversations. If it's not clear for the people watching, listening, like do your marketing. So if that wasn't explicitly obvious at this point, that's why I have this much knowledge in the background. I would never do this much research for a podcast episode. I mean, come on. But you're putting it out there. I mean, there's the better rates thing, which is okay, cool. More safe, better tech. All right, cool. But then there's a real differentiation point that you've kind of alluded to so far in this conversation about when you sat down originally and thought like, well, here's what's wrong, right, with kind of some of how the industry operates, and we know all the reasons for it, but that service, and like intentional service, right, kind of proactive service, you could call it, missing. And the reasons, you're talking, people are in like these large institutions, they're one-stop shops, everyone's doing their own little roles and then going through things. And I know that we've had conversations about situations where clients might have to call into institutions to let them know about problems that ideally the organizations would have known about and been informing clients of, if not like already acting on, like those kinds of situations. And we're not here to throw everybody under the bus or certainly mention names or anything like that, but that there's that we've come up with the whole like the service you deserve kind of portion. So I'd like to just get your take, because this is relevant in so many industries, and even as tech has come about. We have found in COVID times that so many businesses have made adaptations that they could have fucking made forever. Right. Like finding new ways to serve people, to meet people on their own terms. Like that's our big thing. Like meet people on their own terms, make it easy for people to interact, give them what they want, give them a little more than what they want. And if you don't have to, people are usually like, no. And all of a sudden, once we had to change all the circumstances, businesses have easily adapted into being better at service, at meeting people on their own terms and getting out ahead of some of the issues to the degree that they're not hamstrung. So for you, you've got no pre-COVID example, right? But what is for you and for Green Shoots, like what does it mean, like giving people the service they deserve, and why is that such a useful differentiation point?
Excellent. Again,
only
set
two.
of.
There
was probably two questions, but they were two incredibly long questions. And I'm going to do something rather rude and just let my dog out. There we go.
And now the clip won't work because between the questions and the answer, you had to get up and leave. So now we got to So I was saying.
Now piece that together again if you can. This is the joys of working from home.
That's true. That's the perfect COVID thing, right? As the dogs barking, chaos in the background. But yeah, the simple, only twice stacked question is, what does the service you deserve really mean to you and your company? And why is that an important differentiator in today's world?
Okay, so I think you're at the very beginning where you said this is not just our industry, right? This could be any industry. So the service you deserve, you're absolutely spot on as well. Like we're not here to bash anyone, right? We're certainly not here to bash banks. If anything, we are, we're in discussion with a few institutions already who have proactively approached us about partnering with them, for the simple reason that they recognize they have a product, but it is limited through various reasons. And they are concerned about losing clients off the back of having already lost some clients through not being able to do foreign exchange payments, right? And it's not so much that they're losing a $30 wire fee and a little bit of foreign exchange revenue. It's the fact that that client then has to walk up the road, finds a provider that will give them the foreign exchange rate that they want. It's still a relatively bad rate by comparison to probably what we could offer them, but it's a better rate. It's important to the client. And the bank says, I'm not doing 2 payments. I want it all. And so all of that business then migrates from regional community bank to much bigger financial institution. And the company doesn't want to do that in many cases. Like the business doesn't want to do that, right? They love being a larger fish in a slightly smaller pond, right? So that's me going slightly off topic in the sense that I don't want to bash banks because they're partners, right? But so my point where I was going is more one of banks. They have multiple products and multiple divisions, and you've got a relationship manager that typically fronts off against the client and is expected to know everything about all of those products. So the way that I've kind of described myself at previous organizations that I've worked at, where I have been that front of house relationship manager, and I have all these products at my disposal. Like I am more the general practitioner that knows this many diseases, but this much about it. And then behind me sit the surgeons, if you will, that have this much experience on a particular product, but they know that much about it. Right. And so, banks, I think they would love to have real deep and meaningful and in-depth knowledge about all of their products, but you're spreading yourself so thin or thinly. It's just not possible. So clients are therefore not really getting that level of service. It's not a case of like they're getting a crap customer service in the sense that they pick up the phone and they're being ignored or the person's rude. It's about like they're just not if you get a headache, you don't go to your local garage, right? And likewise, when your car breaks down, you don't take it to the doctor. You take it to somebody who is the expert in their field. And so banks, unless they really figure this out, are really vast becoming just like kind of a receptacle for holding a balance. And from that, all of my other services are just going to get plucked, right? I get paid a salary, it goes in. From there, like I buy my insurance through, I don't know, like Geico, I have my health insurance, I've got loan repayments, I've got a mortgage, and none of that necessarily has to be with the bank, right? So all of these funds just flow out. And we're just another one of those kind of like components that can reach into a bank and pull funds into, our environment and provide foreign exchange services to companies. So, with us, it's not just about getting a great price. It's about all of the hand-holding that goes with that, right? And about the education that goes with that. And that could include anything from, and again, I'm being a bit flippant, right? But if we've got, and I say, I'm going to talk about Poland specifically, because that was one of the recent conversations I had earlier on this morning, clients interested in sending payments to Poland. So, we would keep an eye on anything that might affect Poland and therefore the Polish currency. And that could be, and this is the flippant response, like the Polish government have monsters amounts of investment in Bolivia. So if there's an earthquake in Bolivia, then that might have an impact on the zloty currency, right? Or something that the Polish government's going to do. So we're like keeping an eye on not just the currency in the country, we keep an eye on what might affect that currency in that country, which could be something that's completely out of anybody else's periphery or scope. So, and at that point in time, we would then be, reaching into our clients and saying, look, this is what's going to happen. This is where we think the currency is going to move and why. And these are the actions and the steps that we think that you should be taking. You're not going to get that level of engagement with a front of house relationship manager in a bank. And again, I'm going to caveat that by saying that's not their fault, right? I think they would probably love to be able to do that. But when you're pulled in about a million different directions and you're targeted by, in some cases, just management that say, look, just here's your revenue target, go get it however you get it, we don't care,
Yep.
versus some specific silo businesses that say, here's your credit card target, here's your loan target, here is your whatever it might be, right? So they're like, all right, crap, I'm gonna focus over here because that's low-hanging fruit for me. And unfortunately, the client then doesn't get the service that they deserve in that regard, right? Because they're not getting that advice, they're not getting that guidance, they're not getting that hand holding.
Mm-hmm.
And the client, in many cases, the underlying business is blissfully unaware. They're going about their business thinking they're getting great service and everything that their bank can offer and everything's fine and dandy, not realizing that by talking to a specialist company like ourselves, we can peel back the layers of that onion, if you will, and then expose them to some different ways of doing things around making international payments or collecting internationally. And, immediately I know because we've had these conversations, whether it's a CFO, whether it's the owner of the business or whatever, immediately feels a bit like, but if I move away from sending US dollars internationally to engaging in foreign currencies, now I've got risk. Now I'm so you can see there's almost a sense of panic. We're like, no, actually, you know what? Let us break it down into stick figure drawings for you, right? It's really, really basic. You may have had, in the past, you may have thought it was really complex because people often want to make things sound complex so that you feel like you're paying for something. Yeah. And they'll charge you a high amount for it. It's really very simple. It's really very, not very complex. And by the way, here are the tools to mitigate some of those fears that you might have anyway. So let's break it down and then tell you how we're going to manage that process so that, no, you don't have any foreign exchange exposure or a minimal amount. But by doing what we say that you should be doing, you are going to save you and your company a significant amount of money, right? And then there are certainly, and I'm going a little bit off topic here, but there are certainly conversations that I've had more throughout last year. I haven't really had many this year, although we're only 5 or 6 weeks into it, where the business, the decision maker, has been doing it a certain way for so long now that by us coming in and saying, look, here's a way that you can save a ton of money, they probably don't necessarily want to highlight that to their senior management. And so, we would frame that, it helped them frame that in a way that, look, it's not your fault, but it might feel like it and it might sound like it, it might seem like it, but it's not your fault. Again, you don't know what you don't know. If nobody took the time to educate you, how can you blame yourself? How can your company blame you? Let's go with the fact that hopefully you're going to be celebrated by the CEO and the management board rather than lambasted for not having done this in the past. So again, that's providing a certain level of service that clients deserve.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. And I think, you made the point a couple times just to make sure that we're not offending anyone, which I'm glad you care about, because that's not really a big part of this show so much, worrying about that.
I've noticed. Yeah.
But it's not it's not about the people in positions not being able to do things. They're inside that giant, comprehensive, already laid out structure that we talked about they used to be inside of, right? And so if you don't design the structure, you don't design what's incentivized and what your job actually is. And like you said, when your job is to make X revenue across however many channels, it doesn't really matter, but here's the number, here's what you got to have your teams doing, and here's your 100 different options for things to sell. And you're an expert in perhaps none of them, except for just enough to sell some things and hand it off. You're not going to be able to do that. The what people do follows the structure that they're allowed to act inside of. The structure is what determines the results, and what you compensate people for is what they will actually do, right? So not the individual's fault, and at this point it's not any other individual's fault, because if you think it's hard selling people a change in provider, try selling people a change in their organizational structure and how they compensate and benefit people. That's fun. There's a whole field called change management that still hasn't really figured out how to actually have that work very well. But it's not about people, this is not about people inside the banks who are out to fuck us. right?
No, absolutely not.
That's not what we're talking about anyway.
No,
it may or may not be about that in different situations.
Sure, there's some large organizations where,
as far as is what we're talking about, it's about, this is not what they're set up to do. No. And so therefore they can't execute on it the same way that you can in one particular silo. And I know, and we've created content around such things, right? Like, here's what we can't do the all-in-one thing. You can't do the one-stop shop for every kind of service you need. But here's the lane we're in. And if you want better kind of treatment in that lane and a little more proactive information, and yes, save some money and all that kind of fun stuff too, then it's a good lane. So
yeah, absolutely. We're part of a bigger, I don't know what you term it, like an industry, if you will, of supply chain. Like, a lot of what I see on LinkedIn and a lot of what I read about on LinkedIn, when people are talking about supply chain, it's usually people maybe in the freight forwarding, in the logistics market, that effectively clubbing together and talking about everything that involves moving goods and services from point A to point B, which is like super important. And there was one guy I saw recently, he posted a comment which was like, take a look at wherever you're at right now, look around you, and everything that you see was shipped from somewhere to somewhere before you then went and picked it up, right? And so I made the comment off the back of that, and it also had to be paid for. So like, we're part of that chain, right? And it's super important that that there are professional, and I'm not picking on anybody in particular, right? But professional truckers that move it from A to B. There are there are carriers that are moving it from B to C. There are logistics firms, there are freight forwarders, there are customs brokers. There are so many different components, and more that I'm like really starting to learn a lot more about. But very, very few people, even in that realm, are talking about foreign currency payments and international cash management as also being part of the supply chain. Now, when I've worked in banks, when we talk about supply chain in banks, we are talking about the whole gamut. We always think about the whole gamut, right? From the movement of goods to the actual payment of goods. So there's a movement of goods from A to B. There's a movement of cash from B to A, but that often largely gets forgotten. So like, I've been really interested and keen to learn more about the traditional supply chain, if you will, and what's involved in it, for a couple of reasons. One, I just find it fascinating and like really, really interesting. But secondly, I want to be able to solve for a few more problems that our clients and prospects have that maybe they're not really aware of as well, which is going to be tangential to what we're doing here, right? So actually, a recent example being talking to a prospect who was describing the increased costs of shipping or in containers specifically from X to X, and describes how the exporter delivers the goods pretty much from the warehouse, if you will, or from the factory floor in China, literally to his front door. And I'm like, you know what? I'm pretty sure there's other ways around that could be a little bit more cost effective. I'm not the expert by any stretch, but I'm connected to a couple of freight forwarding companies that I like, that I trust. I get nothing from this, but like, maybe you should just at least have that conversation, because my research tells me that if you took ownership from the dock side in China, there's ways and means of you controlling that movement and making it a lot cheaper. So look, I'm not the expert in it, but I know enough to be dangerous to say to somebody, look, if you've got a headache, go see the doctor. If your car's not working, go see the mechanic, right? If this is not working, here's a freight forwarder that I think you should be talking to. My buddy's for example, a customs broker. I think you should go talk to this individual. My buddy is not a customs broker. If he was, I'd be drinking beers with that individual for quite some time. But so I'm learning about these other these other parts and components of what make up supply chain that I never really got involved in. I knew they were there, but I never had really got involved in it. So I guess that also comes back to a little bit of the service you deserve. Like, we can provide that service to a certain degree, but then we have to then turn that client over or that prospect over to somebody who knows that shit. Like, we don't know it. We know enough to be dangerous about it, but we're not embarrassed to say, this is not our wheelhouse. It's not our bag.
Mm-hmm.
Go talk to somebody that does. But I've taken at least some of the headache away by identifying that these people exist, and also they're good individuals. So go chat to them,
Yeah. Nice. Cool. So 2 last things. I'm going to give them to you one at a time because I know you're struggling with the stacks. First thing, and you have to answer with the beer in your mouth, is number 1, where do we find you, the company? Where do we find out about you? Let us know where to find you.
We are everywhere. Well, we're trying to be, thanks to you.
Next question. No.
So find us through our website, which is GreenShootsFX.com. You can find us through there. You can find a ton of information through there. And hopefully at some stage, you'll find some of our partners through there as well, all being well. And people can reach out to me directly as well at mark.ridley@GreenShootsFX.com. Any other question? That was the end of that one, right? Where can the end
of where can we find you?
That's it.
Yeah, there you go.
That's cool.
So that's the only place you can find you. And
I mean, I will just actually jump in there and say, look, if you want to follow what we're also up to, LinkedIn is a great place. Like, we're getting a lot of content out there at this point in time, and hopefully it's in a nice measurable way, to the point that, we're not just throwing junk out for junk's sake, just to try and get noticed. It's very thoughtful, very carefully crafted and well-written, articulate pieces that we think should make a difference to people's lives. So you can follow us on our, obviously on our LinkedIn page, or even on my LinkedIn page as well.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. That's a good throw out there. And yes, content that if this is relevant to you based on what we're talking about, then what is getting put out will actually be valuable, right? So last thing is, well, you kind of get to call this one, but I'm going to limit it to, let's just say 30 seconds, just to put that in your brain. What's your big takeaway of this conversation? What do you want to leave the viewers, the listeners with, whether it's about you, an inspirational message? It doesn't matter. It's up to you what it is, but send us off.
Now I wish you'd give me a heads up on that one, because I could have really cranked something out.
I did. Now you can stutter and fuck this up for 6 or 7 times, and we'll edit it out and then pick the right one.
That's kidding. Also, I'm going to leave you with a couple of things. Number one, I was once mistaken as being part of a rock band from the 80s in the UK, and we'll cover that one on a separate time. And the other thing is, any company out there, whether they feel like they have a problem, or they know they have an issue, or they don't know what they don't know, we're happy to have them reach out to us. Look, we'll have a conversation with practically anyone and help them at least be guided in the right direction. Our mantra, really, like I said earlier on, is not necessarily being in this to make millions of dollars. It's to create awareness and support entities that they're just not being supported today. Mm-hmm. And if they are, and that's by one of our competitors, then I am 100% fine with that. If you feel like you are getting great service, if you know that you're getting great products, check in our box, right? That's job done as far as we're concerned. That's why we were created. You're done. You're fine. That's fine. Take a temperature check if you need to, whatever. But we're here to just say to any company, have a think. Even if you don't know what that really looks like, pick up the phone. Let us have a look at your balance sheet. Let's talk about what you're bringing in to the country. Let's talk about what you're sending out of the US. And if you're doing it all in dollars and thinking, well, that makes sense because I'm a dollar-based institution and I love dollars, that's not always the best way either. So, and again, you could be sitting there thinking, I don't have any foreign exchange need because I send everything in dollars. I've had that quoted to me scores of times. I'm like, you do have a foreign exchange need because you're using US dollars to pay for your goods and services. So no question's too big, no question's too small. And if we can't help you, we will find somebody who can.
Nice. All right, good sir. Well, we're going to wrap that up on that note. And I appreciate you taking the time and being willing to drink in the late afternoon versus the early afternoon, I guess.
Big arm twist, that one. Come chat about your business and drink beer.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Some people love it. Some people are terrified. So, but yeah, I appreciate it. And obviously, we'll be talking with you soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, man. Take care.
Brews BizDev is hosted by Paul Greiner and produced by Renoun Creative. Check us out at renowncreative.com. Are you fucking kidding me?